G'day gang, Ed here, and look, this is a little bit of a bonus, and I also wanted to test out this new functionality in iWork Keynote, which is my presentation software of choice. And so I wanted to add a voice recording to the Golden Nugget PDF, which I produced, which is very cool. It's a great way of using one created piece of content and reformatting it for various distribution methods, which is a very cool technique to use as we go down the track. So I wanted to teach you about the Golden Nugget method, which is, as Julie often jokes to me, Ed, that's just good studying. But hey, always good to give something a nice title, and this title came from somebody who is very dear to me, and I actually learnt all this from Gary Halbert, and I'll put this up here. This is GaryHalbertLetter.com. is an amazing site, and I'd actually encourage you, perhaps you don't have the time right now, but try to get in a newsletter a day and just read a newsletter. In particular, I'd love you to read the Boron Letters, which for me is the best education on direct marketing I've ever read. And it's free. It's up there completely and utterly free. As I sit here recording this, I'm actually looking at one of the original versions. It's a photocopy of the actual handwritten original thing, and it's one of my most prized possessions. It was written while Gary was in jail, and it of course explains that all in there. Don't let the fact that Gary did time put you off reading it, honestly. I think I've learned far more from my mistakes and my errors than any successes. It's just the fact of life. In fact, anybody who's been successful, I can guarantee one thing: they've made more mistakes than you. They're not afraid to make the mistakes. And so please don't let that put you off. But Gary was a huge inspiration to me, and very kind to me, and spent a lot of time with me. I went and lived with him in Miami for a while there while he was teaching me the ropes. And this newsletter really is absolutely brilliant. And as I say, it's completely free. And a big thank you to his sons, Kevin and Bond, for continuing the site and keeping it going, because it is just such incredible content. And as you start to learn, I should say, over the course of the rest of this month, content is everything. That's going to be your job from now on, is creating content or paying somebody to do so. And it's a good skill. It's the most important skill. And as I say, I learnt all my chops right here. And it's, as I say, I keep saying, it's free. It's crazy. So let's talk about Golden Nuggets. So you can see here in this particular, Gary came up with this strategy for writing direct mail letters, but the technique applies to any time you're going to be creating content, whether you're doing an interview or you're recording something like I am now, or writing a blog post or anything like that. It's just the degree to which you go. People ask me, how can you continuously talk about all this stuff? And the truth is, it's because of the study elements. And I've already showed you my blog line secret, and effectively what I'm doing every day is golden nugget theory. I'm looking around the net, everything that goes, oh wow, oh that's interesting, or just any note, I make a note of it. And in the act of physically recording that note, actually physically writing it down, I actually still use, believe it or not, geek boy that I am, I still use a notepad. I use one of those very cool, is it Moleskine? I think it's Moleskine. Those are very nice. They're a bit expensive, the notebooks, but any notebook will do. Or indeed use Google Notebook, which I'm actually using more and more because I like it, so that I can quickly cut and paste things, because of course I'm producing so much digital content. Anyway, whichever way you do it, the important thing is to do it. And when we started doing all of this niche products, we used to literally, just as Gary described, grab those 3x5 index cards, those old index cards, and every single time there was something, write it down. Jot down the interesting thing, as you can see there on the slide. He talked about doing it for headlines. Write down the headlines. Write down wow facts, as Gary would talk about. Anything that makes you go stop and go, huh? Or that's interesting, or anything, because as we go forward now, you've got your phrases. You need to be able to produce content on those phrases, and that can freak people out a bit. But I'm going to show you how to make it really fun. And the way to make it fun, and again, some of you might be flashing back to school assignments and thinking about how horrendous they were. And folks, they were horrendous because of the way they were taught. Really, it was all in the teaching, and it's a crime that we're still taught to write reports and do content the way they are in school still. So, which is a real shame, because it's actually a joy to do, and I used to hate it, and now I love it. And you should love it too, because it's the thing that will set you apart and make you a lot of money down the track, and it's sure better than building houses in 100-degree temperatures or any other sort of manual labour. So it's a good way to do it. So the whole thing with this whole golden nugget theory is to, first of all, what I want you to do is you type your phrase into Google, and I want you to look at the top 10 sites. I prefer 20, but let's at least do the top 10. And I want you to take heaps of notes. But what I want you to do is, with those 3x5 index cards or your notepad or whatever tool or Google Notebook, just one idea per entry. I don't want you to do multiple, because what I want you to do is I want you to be either able to print these out or literally, as Gary would describe it, fondle those facts. Because the reason, and that was my original point, I remember now, the reason people have so much problem with reports and everything like that is they just don't have the information to hand. The reason people struggle writing sales letters and doing all that sort of stuff is that they just... Their writer's block is caused by a lack of information. Another great book that I love, Story, which talks about screenwriting, and Robert McKee, who's a very surly gentleman as a general rule, but still well worth learning from. And he talks about it in very, shall we say, frank language, that writer's block is literally caused by a lack of information, and nothing that a day spent just doing golden nuggets won't fix. So anything that makes you go or wow or gee, that's interesting, because I want you to adopt a state of curiousness, because that is the state which will make you money. If you are approaching this from a state of being editorial, which is our natural state, we're taught to sort, we're taught to judge, and again, I've told you before, that was very important. 40 million years of genetics has ensured that if we saw the metaphysical, I just should use simple language. When the saber-toothed tiger was coming down the track, we had to edit quickly and think, oh, that's dangerous, run. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. So that's at work, and unfortunately there are times where that's very useful, but as I speak there are no saber-toothed tigers here in Moonee Ponds, so really editing we edit at the wrong times, and that's the thing that's taught so badly in schools. Now, the other thing I want you to do, and maybe set up a Gmail account especially for this, so your normal account doesn't sort of get bombarded, is join all those mail lists. Anywhere where in that top 10 they've asked for a mail list or anything like that, you want to join it and you want to have a look at it. Again, you basically, if you can imagine, your brain's amazing. It really is incredible. Anything that you take in, it will take in. It's whether you can access it or not, the other end is the problem. So what I want you to do, by doing all this golden nuggets, you're basically filling your mind with all of these things regarding this phrase. And what's incredible, and there's a whole bunch of, this is not woo-woo now, this is scientific fact. They can measure this. There are various techniques, and you can read Scientific American and all their mind studies and blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is, what will happen is that as you chuck all this stuff in there, your brain will subconsciously start to sort it and start to work through it and everything. And then if you actually, and this is a key thing, is if you take a break from that material and then come back to it, all of a sudden it just flows and you can just write. And people wonder where ideas for stories come and all of those sorts of things. Look, the best writers, Stephen King, Amy Tan, Tolkien, it's very rare for these great writers, Hemingway, to have an absolute specific idea of what's going on. Stephen King used to start off with nothing more than an idea, which was like, what happens if, cars ate people? And that turned into, or what happens if a dog goes bad? What happens if you spill pig blood on a sophomore? Bad news. But that's basically, and the rest of the story came out of that little idea. Now here's the thing, and you'll read Gary's newsletters, and this will come again and again. The hook, the catch, everything that's important about any particular piece of content that you put in together, it will magically appear. It will seem like magic. It will seem like woo-woo. It's not science at work, and we've now got the technology to actually measure and show why that happens. So it's a really cool technique, and if you're still studying, hey homeschoolers, Kids Rock team, this is such an important... If you actually get this, you're just going to slam exams and everything like this. If only somebody had taught me how to do this properly. Or perhaps they did and I didn't listen. Now, of course, make sure you have your blog lines video set up. Okay, really, really important. Blog lines video. Your blog lines set up. So your Firefox browser defaults to blog lines when you click that little orange button in the URL, and subscribe to those blog feeds I showed you, read them and take notes. It's really, really important, as you saw that I did with speed reading. And that's the thing. If you just sit there passively reading blog, 99 out of 100 people will sit there passively just reading and absorbing that. To make the change, make the mental switch, to activate, if you like, imagine there's two sort of piles in your brain. One pile is just like you throw it, like my desk at the moment. If you can only see it, it's horrid. Just stuff thrown on it, okay? And that's when you normally, and you can find stuff. I can, sort of. Unfortunately, there's a Krispy Kreme donut from 7 weeks ago. But what you need to understand is if you throw stuff on a pile, yeah, I can find some stuff here, but it's going to take me a hell of a lot of time and everything else. The mere act of you making active notes, jotting down using Google Notebook or doing whatever, activates the part of your system, whereas instead of the metaphorical messy desk, it puts it in a filing cabinet for you, if that makes a bit of sense. Just if you're going to read it, why not take 3 extra seconds and make the information 100 times more useful? It just makes so much sense to do. Now, of course, the other thing I want you to do is make sure you do a search on Facebook, Google Groups, MySpace, Yahoo for the phrase. Now, when I say the phrase, of course, our phrase is free speed reading that we've been using as the example. But what about that? Now, are there free speed reading groups? There might be, but it's pretty unlikely. Most phrases you'll have to go back to the core market, and our core market in this case is speed reading. If it was sausage making tips, the core market would be sausage making. So you want to look for groups there. And again, you want to read them and actively read, taking notes, more little drop points on your 3x5 cards. It's going to work so well. And there you go. Reading's not enough. Must take notes. And thank you for whoever put that graphic together. I must credit you. And that's the thing. And that's the technique. Now, the end part of this technique, there is actually a sort of a part 2 to this, which we'll explain as we go through this next week of the challenge. But at the moment, I want you to be storing stuff in your filing cabinets. I'll show you the very cool strategy for bringing it out of the filing cabinets effortlessly and easily. So all of a sudden, if you always thought that I could never create content, or I can never write stuff, or I can never talk about stuff, or I can never do this, I have had 100% success rate with people who have followed these instructions. It just works, because it's how your brain works. It's funny, if you market the way the internet works, if you use your brain the way it's actually been designed to work, it's funny how much easier things are. So thanks again, Gaza. It's, as I say, there's so much that he's taught, and please go and have a look at those, the boron letters in particular, and the Gary Halbert newsletters. They're fruity at times, I should say, nothing too atrocious, maybe a bit un-PC at times, but seriously, they're so well worth the read. Alright folks, we'll see how this recording game's gone as well, so that'll be interesting as well. So hopefully if this has all worked and this looks fantastic, that was another part of the new iLife sequence. So, there you have it. Speak soon, gang. Bye.